Hi, this is Craig Severance from the Zero Energy Channel. Come join us as we work to address the challenge of moving toward a world with zero energy from fossil fuels. Getting ready to start the actual framing of the walls now. An old carpentry book that was lent to me by a friend, he called it the Bible of Carpentry, said that you should lay out your walls where they're going to be on the floor first. I'm doing that now. It gives you the opportunity to see if it's going to end up square, because you can take your diagonals with say a string. Here I'm a wall, and so I have to use some twine that I mark for seeing if the diagonals end up equal. We're at about 1/4 of an inch, and there's some stretch in the twine, so it's hard to say exactly, but I think we're good enough here. But we weren't when I first laid them out. It wasn't quite right, so I adjusted one of the walls outward a little bit to compensate for that, to make it. And so this is the first step, is lay it out on the floor, draw where they're going to be, and then of course you have your standard framing procedures of bottom and top plate, marking where your studs are going to be, making sure they're the same on the bottom and the top, and putting in your window openings, etc. So we'll be doing that first with the front wall here, which is actually the back of the trailer, as with most tiny houses. Of course, if you're watching a basic framing video like this one, you're probably somebody like me that's never done this before, so sorry if it seems a little basic, but this is one of the best tools I ever bought. I bought it as part of that batch of used tools from the pawn shop, and it is a lifesaver. And of course I'm here alone today, and it just seems more efficient even when I'm working with Eric not to bother him. But I imagine carpenters have grown a third arm to be able to hold the board in place when they're working with cutting, and they don't need these clamps. But the quick clamps are quick, not very strong, but they're quick, and it holds it in place while I cut it. And my son keeps reminding me, and everybody else around, to always go on the outside of the line so you don't have your saw curve take up 1/8 inch of your measurement. So it's simple cutting, but it's sure this tool is what you need. Okay, so we're cutting a top bottom and a top plate that are both 102 inch width, and you do not get your measurement for the second one off by simply drawing a line off your first cut piece. I'm lining them up here for what's going to happen next, which is where we're going to lay out our studs to be the same. But I did it when I was young, didn't know any better, so I thought I'd mention you always take original measurements for each piece, otherwise your saw is just going to mess you up. Because here we've got the bottom plate and the top plate for this wall section clamped together, and we're making sure that the studs that go all the way from bottom to top are going to line up. And I'm taking the advantage of, I'm pulling the measurements off my plans that are in SketchUp, marking the heights of the studs, and then even the heights of some of the cripples that are going to be on the bottom stud but not hit the top plate. I'm marking them that way, then once I get this all marked up, you can see there's another cripple that I've marked that doesn't go, it's to support a window that isn't going to go up to the top plate. And the main reason you're doing this is to make sure the ones that do go all the way match exactly. But I'm going ahead and marking my measurements out so I can work for a while without having to keep pulling each individual one off the plan. When you're dealing with reused lumber, you have a problem with split ends, and I'm not talking about a hair problem. It's typically because there were nails in it. A lot of times you'll have some slight or even serious splits, and you can get away with using this stuff, but we're just getting rid of the ends because our walls are only about 6 foot 2 inches high after the floor, about 6'4" with the space we're leaving for the floor. So we have a lot of length to deal with here. So I'm just cutting off the imperfections and then getting a nice good corner to, or a nice good end, getting a nice good end to shoot from, to measure from. And one of the tips for using recycled lumber, there's a lot that you don't have to use because you have short ceilings, and you may as well get rid of the stuff you don't like. On the corners, one of the walls that meets at the corner usually has a two 2x4s put together with a 1/2 inch material in between to provide a nailer for the other walls, instead to nail sideways into that 3.5 inch arrangement. And most people use plywood, and I hate to lose the insulation value just for a filler, so I had a bunch of this 1/2 inch Armax laying around, scraps of it. I'm cutting a 3.5 inch strip to be the filler here for each of the corners, and it's real easy to take one of my 73 inch boards and simply lay it on here and trace around it to get exactly the size of filler I need to put between the two boards. So that's what I'm doing. So here I am in the middle of making my 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch post with the insulation as the 1/2 inch in the middle, using some construction adhesive. I'm going to screw this all together, and we'll have our posts, our corner posts. So here's my corner post sandwich with the 1/2 inch insulation in the middle instead of plywood. And just wanted to show you that you want to make sure that this doesn't, using the sandwich, this material doesn't mess you up. You just tap this against, make sure these line up perfectly this way too, and on both ends, and then I clamp them in place while I'm screwing them so they actually do line up with each other. Of course, the deck of the trailer is a great place to lay this all out, and you can see I've got my bottom plate down there, and toward the camera here on this side is the top plate. We have our markings facing inward so we can line up the studs with them, and I'm more comfortable screwing them first. I know we're going to have to put some nails in also for shear, but just going to assemble it now for this, and then I'll probably put the nails in later when it's standing. Oh, you can see on the end there, you're saying how you're going to have to push against this and put some temporary gracing type studs there against on the outside of the trailer to hold the bottom plate in place, especially since I'm working alone here. I need to have something to hold everything in place while I'm working on it. It's a weird position for a clamp. Say, well, what am I doing here? Well, you're going to need to untwist some boards that are slightly twisted or majorly twisted. And I don't know about you, but my hands aren't strong enough to do that barehanded. So I found a really good tool is to clamp onto it with a real strong metal clamp, a regular clamp, and then use that as a handle to get it untwisted and put it onto your lines, and then sink those screws in. I'm going to try to finish this one section before I get rained out. So the storm came and I had to stop, but we got all the full length sections done yesterday, and now we're just going to put the cripple studs and cross pieces in to frame the rough opening for the window. Okay, so we've completed this wall section. I haven't raised it yet, of course. It's just laying there. What you're looking at is we're sort of have the bottom of it toward us, and we're looking at the inside. You can see we've got the studs that go all the way to from the bottom to the top plate, and also put in the rough opening for the window. Checked at the squares with the carpenter squares and the framing square, and it's looking really good, decent with the squares on each corner, both inside and outside, within about 1/16 of an inch of matching the metal squares. And strung the string, I'm here alone again, so I can't use the tape measure very effectively corner to corner. So, and it's within 1/4 to 1/2 inch, depending on whether I'm changing it by pulling the string with different tightnesses, of being exactly the same dimension from corner to corner. And I've shoved it around. This is as best as we're going to get it, so I locked it in place with these braces, and this wall is ready to raise. We'll do another wall section before we raise any, so that we have a couple standing and we can brace those, and there'll be something a little more sturdy than just this one by itself. Okay, we have the first 2 wall sections raised and tied together at the corner, and everything is working beautifully since we laid out on the floor ahead of time exactly where those walls bottom plates needed to be. We followed that, and they ended up perfectly square against each other because that's the way we laid it out. We checked it after we tied them together. That corner is perfectly square, and they're all braced to stay square within them structures. We'll keep that way probably until we put sheathing on. And for us, the biggest trick was waiting for the breeze to lift the tarp up into this sail-like pattern, and then quickly raise the walls, which we did. And now the walls themselves will keep the tarp up. And it's nice being out here in the country. Because you might ask, are we level and plumb? And then of course the question is the trailer level? And it's hard to, we're out here in the country and we're not on a concrete pad, and the trailer is as level as it can get. And I checked the plumb lines on this, and they are off by the same amount the trailer is off being level. So, and they are square with each other, and they are both exactly the same height at the top. They're meeting perfectly. So they're both the same exact distance off the floor. So if the trailer ever is level, then they'll be level. And here's my son Eric, who helped me today, as we have raised 3 wall sections, and they're holding each other up, and we have our tarp above them, and we are on our way to making this look like a house. Okay, we're pretty far along now with the framing. We've gotten the front wall sections up, and here closer to us are the rear 3 wall sections. So we have now just the 2 middle sections that connect the front to the back over top of the wheel wells. That's generally a good way to do it, because those wheel wells are tricky. I want to point out a couple things here we did. This very problematic area by the tongue, I could not figure out by just trying to draw out lines and doing calculations where the line should be, how to make up for the difference here, which gave us fits when we did the floor, with how this bar by the tongue meets the front of the trailer. It's not exactly even. And so I finally gave up on trying to figure it out in my head, and I made 3 bottom plates, one for the one that spans this that will have to be somewhere near this, and then 2 the both side bottom plates. I put the side bottom plates where they had to be 102 inches apart for their full width, making sure front and back they were, and then put this board, an actual board, for the bottom plate for this wall at the rear here by the tongue, and then put the square in the corners, made sure everything fit right, and then put some temporary screws in and drew my lines. Then that worked, and we ended up with the walls getting this front board where it actually had to be in order to beat square with the side wall bottom plates. So here's my dog Corin, and here's my constant companion. So that worked, and if you can't figure it out on paper, it does work to just cut your bottom plates and lay them out on the floor and tie them down temporarily while you're doing this. Another thing I want to point out, this nice tarp that we got from one of the big box lumber yards, so we just bought the biggest tarp they had, is keeping us dry while we're still don't have a roof. And now we have the walls up, it's holding up the tarp nicely. I didn't want it pooling in the middle, so I put my big orchard ladder here, which is good for construction too because it's self-supporting, so that it's like a tent pole in the middle, so that the rain will go off of this. It's been raining almost every day here, so the tarp was important.
Hello, my name is Eric. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up down below. Also, if you want to subscribe, that's good too. Join us on the Zero Energy channel.